This is Cydni.
And I'm Sher. And each week we get together to share with you a message of hope.
It is through our own study and our personal experiences that we offer the reminder to not only seek the light,
but be the light. You can find peace, and there is hope.
And as long as one of us is slightly caffeinated, there will be laughter.
Today's topic is becoming unified.
And we're so glad you're here.
I'm forging my way through the tip top. I'm living my life through the drip drop. When he turns.
All right, Cydni, today we're going to talk about becoming unified. What the heck does that mean?
I know you just asked a question that had to do with our topic, but let me just tell you what I'm thinking about instead. Because last night I took Iana to Disney on Ice with her friends. It was so much fun. We spent like $90,000 on little ices, but they're in a special cup. And so you stand in line for 45 minutes and then you give them all your money. And then the kid spills it all down their clothes so you can wash laundry later. But part of it was Encanto. Did you like that one?
Yeah, I liked it.
I liked it too. Mm-hmm. But that song, Surface Pressure.
Oh, yeah.
I have to say that it got me last night because there I was having a great time watching Iana get into it, dancing, doing her thing, singing along to the songs that she knew. It was fun. But then Surface Pressure came on and I was thinking, is that song meant for adults? Because it hurt my heart. I felt like I was dazed off into this different world and I went blank and I was like, I really feel that way. The pressure, every time she was like, I'm fine on the surface, but underneath the surface, I'm about to break. And I was just cracking inside and it hurt so bad. I was thinking they should not do that. I don't want to hear surface pressure because I'm trying to get through it, but I'm not as strong. But I will tell you this, the donkeys danced and they possibly lived a nightlife before they went to Disney on Ice. They were like shaking their booties. Honestly, I saw a lot of dads looking and a lot of moms glaring at them.
At the donkeys?
Yes, if you saw, you'd understand. The donkeys were moving it like they had a different life before they found Jesus, but they couldn't take out who they were before. So the Disney on Ice donkeys, they got moves. And I think a lot of husbands got in trouble and they're probably confused leaving because they're like, why did I keep looking? Because they're donkeys. And I'm with my children, but they were like amazing. They were dropping it like it's hot.
This whole story is making me feel uncomfortable.
If you were there, Sher, you would see what I mean with these donkeys. They stood out, all of them. They all danced and they danced. They put their heart and soul into it. But I did think to myself, everything was going fine. You're fine spending that much money on their slushies and making little dreams come true. But then suddenly they hit you so hard right in the face with surface pressure. And you're just like, I'm cracking. And then they bring out the donkeys and then your husband's looking at the donkeys and you're like, I am cracking. What is happening? I can't dance like that. I will never compare. I can't even on solid ground dance the way they danced. They're like hands up in the air, hips side to side. I was like, whoa, that is amazing.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed Disney on Ice, and what stuck out was the pressure song and the dancing donkeys.
Right.
Anyway, back to what we were talking about
We
today.
never got there, actually.
No, we never did. So what we're talking about, Cydni, is becoming unified. I asked you what that meant, and you started talking about donkeys' butts.
I honestly don't understand how that is so far off topic.
And this is why I'm going to go ahead and take over.
Okay.
When I thought of becoming unified, I had two stories immediately pop into my head. The first one was years and years ago when my nephews, who are older than you, Cydni, Nate and Landon, we were on vacation and we were camping at a lake. And my parents really wanted to take all of their grandkids to a dinosaur quarry. But to save money, everybody piled into the motorhome and we all drove to the dinosaur quarry. It's really not that far, but part of the road is dirt and you're driving on a dirt road in a motorhome. So you're going like 2 miles an hour. And so it was like a good 35, 40-minute drive on the dirt road. So we went, saw the dinosaur quarry, super fun. Then everyone piled back into the motorhome and then we took off. And my mom, who was always wanting to feed us, she wanted to make everyone ice cream cones. So she got out the ice cream and she got out the cones and she started scooping ice cream cones up for everybody. And she started at the youngest grandkid. And then
She was like, come here, kids, from the buffet. I have in my front pocket some ice cream for you.
I have an ice cream and a chicken wing. Here you go. So she hands out the first ice cream cone and then she gets to Landon. And Landon and Nate are on the older end of the grandkid scale. So it took a minute. So she said, Landon, no answer. Landon, no answer. I was in back where their bed was. And she said, Sher, is Landon back there with you? And I was like, nope, no Landon. And then the next thing out of her mouth was, Nate, where's Nathan? Where is Nathan? No answer. And then my mom's like, turn around. We had left them at the dinosaur quarry, both Nate and Landon. They were probably about, I'm going to guess 15 and 17, maybe. But we turned around and we were almost off this dirt road. We'd been driving for about 30 minutes. So we were gone for at least an hour. When we get back, I remember seeing Nate and Landon's faces. They were sitting out in front of the dinosaur quarry on some big boulders. And when we saw them, it was the sheer look of disgust. And we opened up the motorhome door and they were just like, you left us. And we're like, sorry about that.
Did they get ice cream still?
They still got ice cream, but I just want to point out that it was Grandma that realized that we had left them.
I don't know. It's kind of a compliment to them that obviously they're not so loud that you notice they're gone.
Oh, that's true.
Like, let's twist it to that way where it's more positive.
So Nate and Landon, if you're listening, it's because you guys were so well behaved that we didn't even notice.
It's not like you don't matter and that your presence is unnoticed.
Exactly. So way to be well-behaved teenage boys.
That's a good spin.
Anyway, I will never forget. It was just this sheer look of disgust, disappointment. You left us. They saw us driving away and they thought it was a joke. They thought we were just messing around with them. And then they're like, they really left us. And they just couldn't believe it. That is a bad example of becoming unified. Leaving somebody to rot out on boulders in the middle of the desert is...
By some dinosaurs.
By some dead dinosaurs is not a good way to make people feel loved, unified, and connected. So there's the bad example. The good example is church. I don't really fit into, I guess, the typical church box because I'm not married and I just kind of do who knows what. But my church community, they always have just shown me nothing but love. They don't make me feel like I don't fit in. And I truly love them because of it. I've been part of other church groups where definitely did not get that vibe where they kind of look down on me, but I've never felt that way where I am now. And that is what it means to feel unified in Christ, is that you just love people wherever they are at that moment. And hopefully loving people where they are will help people want to be a part of us in our Christian community. That doesn't mean that we need to change to unhealthy beliefs that some people might have. We want to stay with God and share the pure love of Christ with others. And hopefully they'll want to change and be more like us.
And since I belong to the same one and we go together, I agree that this is one of the most welcoming and loving group of people that I've ever got to attend church with. But I've noticed that people, especially like when we're together as women, are so open to talk about their real life, not a cookie cutter expectation. People just say, these are the really hard times in my life. I went through this. I went through that. I've left and religion altogether for years and I came back, or I'm doubting right now, but I'm still here trying to figure it out. I thought the honesty has been beautiful.
I agree with you because humble, authentic, genuine, kind. And I feel there are so many of our neighbors have been beat with the humble stick and they're not afraid to say, I know it's hard, but we can do it together. And that's what I love about them.
I do too, because it's given me a safe place and I feel fine to say the same stuff. I think sometimes when people go to church, they just feel like you have to be a perfect member in some sort of way. Like you have to have this together, and this together. The only perfect people go to church, but that's never what it was meant to be. And I feel like everybody here comes together and we laugh a lot and it's beautiful. I love it. I love it so much.
And it makes you feel that you are part of a community and that you are loved and that we really can unify and get through things together because everybody is so kind and supportive. And I wish that for everyone. I hope you find that church group, that church community that accepts you where you are and loves you. I am grateful that I was blessed to find that here. I'm so blessed. When I was thinking about this, I found a quote by Elder Todd Christofferson, and he said, having been given this privilege, and I just want to stop there, the privilege he's talking about for us is that we have the knowledge of Christ and Christ's gospel. Continuing on with what Elder Christofferson said, we cannot permit any racism, tribal prejudice, or other divisions to exist. The Lord commands us, be one, and if ye are not one, ye are not mine. We should be diligent in rooting prejudice and discrimination out of the church, out of our homes, and most of all, out of our hearts. When I read that, I thought of a couple of things. The first one is that Christ set the example, and he wants us to treat each other as he would, That means he wants us to get all those yucky feelings that we might have towards each other. He wants us to rip those out of our heart, to be more loving and kind and more open to people and share the gospel of Christ with them.
I like that he says out of your heart, because you might appear to be a loving person and say the right stuff, but you can sense when someone's not authentic. So maybe your appearance is that of, I love everybody and I am great. But under the surface, do you get that? Because it's the song.
I forgot already.
But under the surface,
the pressure,
the drip, drip, drop, maybe your heart's not so good. So do root it out of your heart and maybe be aware of what you're thinking when someone walks in. Don't let Satan sit on your shoulder and have bad thoughts.
Sorry, Cydni, I'll stop doing that to you. My bad.
That was 100% just talking to you. I saw you on Sunday.
Okay, the second thing that really popped out to me is he said, knowing what we know and having the gospel of Christ is a privilege. And this reminded me of the privilege that we have in living in this country where we have the privilege and honor of worshiping God the way we choose. And that wasn't the case for the world for thousands of years. There was no freedom of worship. But we live at a time where we can choose, and we can choose to worship God in the way that we want. This all changed with the founding of the United States. Benjamin Franklin said, "Only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters." Remember that quote, that the founders of the United States recognized that in order to be free, that we needed to be virtuous. And if we got out of control and we became vicious and corrupt, that's when people need masters. The second quote I want to tell you is from George Washington. He said, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports." So in order to stay free, they understood that we needed to be a moral people and that religion and freedom of worship is what would give us that support. The importance of religion is so important to freedom and agency that it is in our First Amendment. The First Amendment says, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion and prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press." And then it continues. The point is, the very First Amendment, which many historians believe the reason it's first is because the founders saw it as the most important. The very first thing was, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." So it's the first one right out of the gate. That is our number one privilege, is the freedom to worship.
And before the First Amendment was written, I'm going to tell you where some of the inspiration came from.
I
have been doing some research and I found some very cool stuff. Are you ready?
Oh my
for
gosh,
my history
Cydni.
lesson?
I'm so proud of you.
I'm
I
a
can't
changed
wait.
woman. Okay, about 350 years ago, there was a town called Flushing, New York.
Flushing?
As in flushing away anything bad in humanity.
I've just thought of flushing the toilet.
You flush down poop. That's like the same idea. Flush down bad ideas.
And release the pressure.
Yes. Okay. In Flushing, New York, the Quakers were established and they had their church buildings before religious freedom existed. Now, I really liked the statement, "before religious freedom existed," because I have not spent much time thinking or appreciating that there was a time when you did not have religious freedom. This town had over 100 religious groups, and they all decided to come together and help out the Quakers because they had the knowledge that if the Quakers couldn't worship the way they wanted to worship, then they would be next, that they also wouldn't be able to worship the way they would want to worship. So they came together and they signed the Freedom of Conscience. This was one of the first documents signed for religious freedom. Hannah Smith, who is one of the members of the Becket Fund for Religious Freedom, defined this document as the right to not be forced to do something that violates truth that God has spoken to your heart. I love that last line. I'll say the whole thing again because it's short. The right to not be forced to do something that violates truth that God has spoken to your heart. The town all came together on that exact thing because they believed God had spoken to each of their hearts. but maybe it looked different. And in this town, there were Hindus, there was Buddhists, there were Jewish people, there were Christians, there were all kinds of groups. And they all came together. Every single religious leader that lived there came together and they signed this. And they promised each other that they would allow each other to worship the way they would want to worship, not just privately, but also publicly, that people could worship the way they would want to worship, because they agreed that they all believed that freedom of religion was critical. And they all believed in the greater good of humanity. And they saw the answer as worship the way that you see best fits your heart. Whatever God has spoken to your heart, I can't take away. So live it. They have a recent documentary on this little town, and about 5 or 6 of the religious leaders all get together and they share what some of the things that the community does. They have an interfaith breakfast every month. They have interfaith walks once a year, and it doesn't matter what you believe. It only matters the community and the support. They said that they believe that if one group of people is getting persecuted, the right thing to do is to go and support them, to lift them and help them. It doesn't matter that you have a different God. It doesn't matter to them. What matters is they understand that everyone feels like they've had a truth spoken, and we will support you and believe what you want to believe. And here's a few examples of what they do in this town. At the end of Ramadan, when they break their fast, those who belong to the Hindu religion open up their temple and they provide the feast for all of the Muslims who are breaking their fast. They put it on for them. I thought that was so beautiful.
That's really cool.
Then the Jewish community calls this the Luna Sabbath. And those who are celebrating like the Chinese New Year come together, and the Jewish community brings in dancers that are dragon dancers, and they bring their culture there into the community for them. And they do these acts throughout the year to show community.
That is so cool. I love that.
And every few years, they still get together and they re-sign the freedom of conscience. And they said that George Washington came to this town and that it was an inspiration for the First Amendment because they saw how people were coming together and supporting each other no matter the differences. They said they do not spend time criticizing or judging or talking down about someone else's religion, that they only have time to work on being their best self and to only have time to work on following the truth that is in their heart. And in their heart, they believe in being good people and good humans and that we're eternal. And so they live that way, that we're brothers and that we're sisters. End of story.
That's so great.
I love that story so much.
Me too. I wish that would just spread a little bit around our own country and the world. That'd be so wonderful.
When I was learning about this town, the Flushing, I did have this come to my mind that I've never thought about before. Jonah and the well story. I noticed something that when he's on the boat going the opposite way that God wants him to go and the storm comes in, I noticed that this is what they say first in Jonah, that everyone's afraid. And then it says this, and cried every man unto his God. That just stuck out this time to me because I think that if you are in a time of crisis, no matter what, I think more people praying to who they believe, the better personally. And it feels like that happened on the ship. Everyone's like, hey, pray to your God, make it right with your God. And they do ask Jonah, they basically say, call on thy God, not, hey, worship my God, come over here and change everything you believe. But they say, call on thy God, make it right with your God, bro. Like whatever he's told you to do because you're affecting all of us. Mm-hmm. And I never noticed this, that in Jonah, they don't try to change what he believes. They don't say, hey, this is happening because of what you believe. They don't say anything except for make it right with your God. Whatever you believe, make it right. He does end up in the whale's mouth, but I liked that there was religious freedom on that boat. And then just to sum up religious freedom, I'm just going to read the definition. Religious freedom is the right to practice your faith, to have faith, to manifest it publicly and privately. Also, the right to act and interact with people of different faiths that is consistent with your own faith.
I really love that. It brought to mind a few years ago, I was preparing my students for the civics test that they need to take. As I was teaching them about religious freedom, I kept using the word worship. And I was doing that on purpose because I've given the test quite a few times and I happen to know that they interchange those two on the test, religion and worship. And I had a cute girl sitting in the front. She was from, I believe it was Congo. She raised her hand and she said, in very broken English, I don't know what worship means. So I was explaining it to her what worship meant and the First Amendment. And she started crying. All of my students were like, what did you do? And I was like, I don't know. And tears streaming down her face. And I was like, what is wrong? What happened? And I was trying to figure it out. But she was just learning English. She finally was able to get out. In my country, when I go to church, it is very scary. And she started to describe and act out men with guns shooting people that went to church. She said, but here I go to church and made a few people in my class, including I got a little teary-eyed. And we had a really good discussion about the difference between living where we live and where she came from. And to me, that was so humbling. So when we were talking about that religious freedom privilege, it is really important. And it is so impactful. And when you see it through a 14-year-old girl explaining it to you in broken English with tears streaming down her face, it really hits you right in the gut of what we do have and what an honor and a privilege it is to worship God in the manner that you choose and how important that is. And I love the example that the community you just described gave to all of us, because that truly is what it's about. I'm going to believe what I believe, and I don't want to change. It works for me, and I want to keep it that way. But if somebody else chooses to believe something else, I don't want to exclude them. If they are trying to live and be a good person, I want them to be a part of my community, and we need to help each other to create the country and the communities that our founders envisioned in the first place.
I really like that idea because I've just ran through my head how many opportunities I've had to go to other churches and have such positive experiences with people who believe different things than I do. I've met some of the most beautiful people. At a young age, I remember going with my cousins to their church, and I thought that their preacher could possibly be an angel. He was so pure and good, and I felt such love from him, and he had an actual physical light about him. And that was really impactful for my life, to know that there are so many good people of so many different faiths who are truly trying to live the way Christ lived. Or even my grandma, who was atheist, or a friend of mine, Jessica, who didn't believe in anything. They both do or did so much service for those around them. And I think that's where we need to come together, that maybe some of our beliefs are different. What do we have in common? And so many people of all different religions or all different beliefs. I think of Jessica's words, who said, I don't know what I feel about religion right now in my life, but I do know that in my heart, I want to be a good person. And that's what I'm going to go with. And our friendship has been amazing our whole life. Even though we have completely different beliefs, we can come together. Our boys were best friends when they were little. It didn't matter. We had the goal of being good people. And I think sometimes our differences are so distracting that we don't even pay attention to what we actually have in common.
Exactly, because we're not focusing on the heart. And that's what Elder Christofferson said, is that we needed to
rip your heart out under the deep, deep pressure.
Exactly. We need to get all those yucky feelings towards each other out of our heart. So how can we look at each other and see what's on the inside, see each other's heart? Elder Christofferson said, a sense of belonging is important to our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. Yet it is quite possible that at times each of us might feel that we don't fit in. In discouraging moments, we may feel that we will never measure up to the Lord's high standards or the expectations of others. We may unwittingly impose expectations on others or even ourselves that are not the Lord's expectations. As I was reading this, I thought sometimes maybe what the problem is, I judge myself so harshly, and then I do that to other people. I judge them with that same lens. The Lord doesn't want us to do that. The Lord wants us to look on the heart. He cares about our desires and our longings and what we are becoming. And this is how we should be looking at people, is what are they becoming? We all take different roads and paths to get there, but that's their path and they're in God's hands. And how they get there and what they're becoming, that's up to the Lord, not me.
That's just funny because recently Ben and I were on a long flight with our children, and I have this little game on my phone that I love to play. It's a block puzzle. You have to get straight lines and then they disappear. And I find it incredibly satisfying. And Ben, he's always like, why don't you play chess or something productive? And then he will take my phone and play it. Yeah. And I think partly just to beat my high score, which he does every time. But we've never really sat next to each other and played it until this flight. I was playing it and he's like, give me your phone. I'm going to beat your score. And I sat there and I watched him play my game where you put different block pieces. They're different shapes. They're different sizes in his order that he wanted to put them in. Now, I'm incredibly ADHD. Ben is incredibly OCD. So, of course, he's going to do better. But that's besides the point. I was watching him and I was so frustrated. I hated where he was putting the blocks. I could not stand it. I was like, why are you putting the block right there? That's not where you put it. And he's like, get off me, girl. Like, I got this. And I watched him and I felt it like a pain in like my elbows and my arms. I was like, this is so maddening. I cannot stand how Ben is doing this. He beat my score, whatever, besides the point.
He still did it wrong.
He did it wrong. Then I took it and I was trying to get my score again. And he's like, wait, why are you putting that brick there? Why are you doing it that way? And we both were honestly losing our minds watching the other person play the game that they were playing. But our scores were so close together. And I thought, this is interesting because we are playing the same game. We have the same objective, the same goal, but we're doing it completely different. And I wanted to be like, Ben's right is wrong. Because it was annoying. It didn't feel right to me.
And it's your game.
It's my game. My battery is like 5. He's like, how's yours so low? Mine's 87. I'm like, because you've been on mine the whole time. Also, I did think to myself, it's so interesting because we're both getting the job done, but we're driving each other crazy on how the other person is doing it. However, it's still accomplishing the purpose. And I think that could apply, that we're all on the same path with the same purpose, heading towards the same end goal of, not burning in hell, but trying to be a good human. But maybe the way someone is doing it is driving you crazy. And maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it's working. Maybe it's getting the job done.
I agree. So what I learned from that is it's really important that we not judge each other for the way they are trying to be a good person. If we're all trying to be a good person, we're all trying to help each other. That's the key. And God doesn't want us to judge ourselves too harshly. And he doesn't want us to judge his children too harshly either. What he does want us to do, though, Elder Christofferson, he's going to give us the secret sauce. The secret sauce to all of this is belonging comes not as we wait for it, but as we reach out to help one another. And I love that so much because how many times have we been studying, learning this last little while, Cydni, and it has said over and over and over again that the secret, the magic key, the abracadabra is service, us serving other people. And that's where everything starts working and clicking. If we want to create a sense of belonging, not just for other people, but if I want to do that for me, if I want to feel like I belong, then I need to serve other people. And I think that is just so beautiful that really that's all that it comes down to. That's the secret sauce right there.
That's powerful. It made me think that you do love the people you serve. I think that as a mom, that I think there's a reason we love our children so much because they provide so many opportunities all day long to serve them. So how are we not going to love them? But also Christ served everybody and he loved everybody. So let me tell you about one of my favorite people that ever walked on this planet, JoAnn Draper. I love this story that my friend Blaine shared with me. She said her mother, JoAnn, she would read Reader's Digest, the nicest places to live. And this article started in 1922 and it goes on to this day. They will pick a place that is the nicest place to live and the reasons why. And for your information, I looked it up and 2023, the place was Bronx.
Bronx?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. I was like, what?
This goes back to me judging.
Me too.
Open up your heart.
But they picked it because this family-owned gas station right in the heart of the city, kids can come in, and if they answer questions to math, they get free candy.
Oh, that's cool.
That's fun, right?
Yeah.
But that's the thing is the cities that win are always like realistic things that someone, like your quote said, they didn't wait for something. They decided to make the belonging happen. But JoAnn, she did the same. She one day decided that she wanted to make her town make the list one day, the town we grew up in. She wanted to put that on the map and wanted Reader's Digest to pick them. So she got to thinking of what could she do on a grander scale to get on the map in Reader's Digest nicest places to live. So she went to city council with an idea and she went before them and said, all right, guys, I have a plan. We need to start the kindness committee. And then she explained why and what they needed to do. And they said, that is a great idea, JoAnn. We vote you to be president. And she said, oh, wait a second. No. I was giving a suggestion for someone else to do it and I will help. And they said, you will help by being the president because nobody else in this room is more fitting than you. And that's true because JoAnn constantly served other people. And I know from Valine that it started because someone at church paid for JoAnn to get braces when she was a young girl. She's beautiful. She had always been beautiful, but she had really terrible teeth and her family was really poor. And someone, I believe he was a dentist, he took it on and he paid for it for her. And that for her continued a lifelong service of serving others.
I love that.
Everyone loved JoAnn.
It just goes to show you never know. Like sometimes you serve and it doesn't go anywhere, but sometimes you serve and it just keeps going. That creates such a beautiful pattern. I love that.
So JoAnn became president of the Kindness Committee of Pima, Arizona. They got together a committee and they would do things like when someone moved in. Now that granted, this was a very small town, so it was easy to know when someone moved in. In fact, everyone already knew everything about them. But they would work with different businesses, favorite Mexican restaurants, or if a dentist wanted to throw his card in, and they would give them the places that people love. They would give them gift cards or movie tickets and just put together a welcome to Pima little package, which I thought was adorable.
That is adorable.
I'm going to move there just to see if it still exists. And so I liked this because it goes along with that. She didn't wait. She started a kindness committee in her town, which is the cutest thing I've ever heard. When she passed away, her children would start to receive her mail. In it, they would find that quietly JoAnn donated so much money, thousands and thousands of dollars to individuals, to organizations that were good, and they would discover how much good their mother constantly did, no matter what someone's background was. She paid for cancer treatments. She would help people who had an unexpected pregnancy and needed help getting on their feet to support the baby. She would do so much good, no matter who somebody was. And the additional part, her husband, Rusty, before her passing, wanted to learn how to make pumpkin pie from scratch. So he asked JoAnn, will you teach me how to make pumpkin pie from scratch? And she wanted to know why. And he said, because I think I'll start taking it to people. So Rusty started, after he retired, making pumpkin pie almost every single day and would take it to people across the whole valley. He does burritos now.
I love this.
I would want one of those burritos, man. I not so much a pumpkin pie, but a burrito, yes.
I'll take either.
When she talks about it, I always think, how does he decide who's the luckiest person ever that day? Because he just picks people from towns all around our town and he takes people lunch at lunchtime, or he used to take them a pumpkin pie. And I thought, how amazing is it that it just spirals, like you said, in a positive way, that someone did something for her at such a young age and the impact she has had on so many people, including me. Also, my friend Valine, when she went through one of the hardest things that she went through in her life, she started feeling down. She was feeling sorry for herself. Someone had done her real wrong. And she said that she told her mom, I'm so sad. This is so hard for me. And her mom said, excellent. I've been waiting for you to say that. It's time to go serve somebody. She said, you will not stay a victim. You're not a victim. You have so much good in your life and you have so much to offer. Get your shoes on. We're going to go do something. And she made Valine get to work. Beautiful human.
I love everything about that story. And it goes back to the quote that is, belonging comes not as we wait for it, but as we reach out to help others. And we've talked in other episodes about if you're feeling down and having a hard time, service is the answer. And always over and over again, service is the answer. And that is such a great example.
It is. And to add one final thought when it comes to JoAnn, a lot of it started from a moment in her life, but there was a time in a community that she did not feel welcomed, that it felt like her family was not important to the community. And then she went to a community that she was welcomed and felt the difference. And then she went to another community and said, in this community, I know how I want it to feel, so I will get to work. So she understood what it felt like to not feel like you belong, but in her reach, people would feel like they do belong.
Oh, that's so great. Did she get your town in the Reader's Digest?
No.
What?
No, but she got it in my heart.
I demand a recount. So for our final thoughts, as children of God, we have been given amazing gifts and wonderful privileges. Love and service is the secret to creating that sense of belonging for all of us. And hopefully that will draw people to us, just like JoAnn did in her small little town, creating that sense of belonging and that sense of unity. Cydni and I both love the quote, belonging comes not as we wait for it, but as we reach out to help one another. And if we focus on that, then we truly can create a sense of belonging and becoming unified.
Our challenge this week is to practice what you preach. Don't criticize other religions. Don't make fun of other faiths. Teach your children to respect others' beliefs and take time to learn about your friends and your family's religion, which is our pinpointed challenge. We challenge you this week to learn something about someone else's religion. We did this. You want to go first, Sher?
Yes. I've always wondered something about the Jewish religion that I've heard about, but I didn't understand why. They have a week where they build a hut and they have dinner outside in this hut, or sometimes they'll stay in the hut for the week. And I think I was drawn to this because as a child, I was like, oh my gosh, that'd be so cool to stay out in a hut in the backyard for a week. But I've always wondered why. And the reason is because it is a tradition to eat outside and for some to sleep in the hut for 7 days. And it is a festival of Thanksgiving in commemoration of the 40-year period during which the children of Israel wandered in the desert after leaving slavery in Egypt, living in temporary shelters as they traveled. I thought that was so beautiful, and there's so much more to it, but that would have to be a whole nother podcast. So I'll stop right there. I just really loved learning and reading about that.
I watched a full video on the 5 largest religious groups in the world, and I didn't know all 5. I paused it and tried to guess what they were, and I only got 3. So I didn't know 2 of them. I won't tell you or make you try to guess.
Thank you.
But I'll tell you. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism are the top 5 largest religions today. Do you know the oldest one?
Buddhism.
Close, Hinduism. But Buddhism came from a man who was first Hindu, but didn't like everything.
I knew that.
Oh, dang. I thought you said don't say that. I was like, no, it's true.
I shouldn't have known that. I took quite a few world religion classes in college because I just enjoyed it so much. And as soon as you said that,
You recalled it?
yeah, I felt my heart sinking a little bit. But you know what? I had a stroke. I'm not supposed to remember everything.
Right. Same reason I don't remember everything, because you had a stroke.
Exactly.
I also love to learn about others' beliefs and their religions. And I think if you open up your heart and your mind, that you really can see the light in other people who are truly trying to be good on this earth.
This is our prayer.
From Cydni and Sher, thanks for being here. Surface pressure.
I'm forging my way through the tip top. I'm living my life through the drip drop. When eternity's plan, I just can't stop. I'm making my way through the drip drop.
Ding, ding, ding. I forgot I was supposed to come up with something to say during this podcast, right?
Yeah, it's a podcast. You're supposed to talk. Burped in my throat gurgle. Okay. The second thing he said that really popped out to me.
I just like that play-by-play.
You're welcome.
To rip your heart out
To rip your heart out.
under the deep pressure shot. But you like the kill the emotions, pressure.
You can do it.
I'm strong. I'm the strong one.
You can do it.